kick things off, my name is Jason Edelman, as Tom said. I'm with esteemed colleagues today on our team, Damian Garros, John Anderson, Jeremy Stretch, and we're going to tag team the next 2 hours to really bring to you five concrete things we're going to discuss. I'll kick things off talking a bit about who we are and where we came from, then hand it off to John Anderson, who's going to talk about architectures in the context of network automation. There's a lot of tools that are very popular these days with various things with automation. You'll hear about some of those this week, things like verification, emulation, combination of things that really add a lot of value to network automation, but very often is missed, thinking about why architectures are important and what the value could be when you start thinking about different tool sets, different processes working together, working smarter, versus thinking about different tools working in their own siloed domain. Now, if we look at an architecture and go on the journey of a deployment, is what we'll cover next. So for the hour of the journey, part 1 and part 2, I'll be working with Damian to take everyone on that journey. Now, as a business, we fulfill our clients through professional services. So we're going to walk through what it's like to engage the network to code as a business and showcase a lot of tech that we work on every day and what that's like through lots of demos, integrating various tools and technologies to complete and create holistic solutions for network automation. Then we'll close with NetBox. So NetBox is a thriving open source project in the space of IPAM infrastructure management, and initially founded by Jeremy Stretch, who will present with John Anderson, another lead maintainer of NetBox, for the final 30 minutes or so today, just to share a bit about what NetBox is, where it's going, and just to really have that community around NetBox to just share with the overall field day community as well. Okay, just to dive in about who we are. So we're actually 5 years old. I was actually, I think, a delegate once or twice, just as we kicked things off at Network to Code back in 2014 and 15, and a lot's changed in the past 5 years. But around that time, just around early 14, I was working for a large VAR, and that kind of was the creation of the business. And going back then, I spent a lot of my time doing technical pre-sales engagements, a lot of architecture and design. And at that time, I had access to Cisco 1PK. It was one of the first SDKs that emerged to allow you to program against a networking device. Right? Various libraries, C, Java, and Python to communicate against Catalyst switches, routers, and the whole 9 yards. And for me, it was eye-opening to see for the first time what that meant to program against a networking device. And I often joke that I had programming in high school, 1 semester in college, just enough to know what code was. And as a network engineer, almost 20 years ago, I would always hear the senior folks on my team talk about scripts. And I would always say, would you mind emailing me that script? Every time it was always a notepad file or a Word document with procedural guidelines. And I could never understand what a script actually would be with code. And 1PK actually gave me that. And for the first time, it was very eye-opening to see operational models could be changing in the future. In that same, I'll say 2-month span, 5 years ago, I had some early demos of Ansible automating devices. Around the same time, Jeremy was spearheading things at Juniper, and a lot of that was the history within that 2-month span, seeing Ansible on networking devices, seeing 1PK emerge. Around the same time, there was Python switches from Arista and Cisco coming out and new APIs. And it was an aha moment for me to realize that how we operate networks hasn't changed in decades, and realizing that I was spending most of my time helping clients do architecture and design, and then leaving when the hard problems really started. And even when we helped them install equipment, we were still leaving post-install. So the day-to-day operations really wasn't focused on by anybody. And that was the initial creation of the company, to focus on education. We have things like formal training classes to educate on what does it mean to have an API on a switch, Python, Ansible, a lot of these technologies that are very common these days. So from a business perspective, we are 100% services based. Right? So not your typical NFD company. We're not selling a product. Right? We're selling services to create holistic solutions for network automation. Our team's grown quite a bit over the past 5 years. We're actually just about 35 strong collectively. We have 3 extremely talented folks in the back of the room, 30 more distributed throughout the world, folks in Europe, folks in the US. We're probably in about 35 plus Fortune 500 companies, so very large global clients. But at the same time, in the past 12 to 18 months, we're expanding rapidly into the general global 2000, and vertical-wise, it's really a huge mix. Financials and pharmas are up there, but at the same time, the issues that we're helping our clients solve are really vertical independent. And engaging with us, typically, it's going to be multiple months at a minimum. 3 at a minimum has been common, but it goes up where it could be 2 plus years, right? When you look at what needs to get done to go embark on a automation journey, it's not going to happen overnight. And that is a very common myth. When we look at products and tools that can help solve problems, the reality is when you look at things holistically, it's going to take a combination of tools and technology, but at the same time, a potential redefinition of things like culture and process internally as well. So a bit more about our team. Skill sets vary. A lot of our team has spent time hands-on, operating networks, operating automated environments, cloud providers, gaming companies, large enterprises. So a variety of skill sets from network engineers all the way to software engineers. And even in between, there's multiple skill sets that we believe. So not everyone is going to be software engineer. There's going to be tool consumers, tool people that can extend a tool, people that can create tools. There's really a variety of skill sets that we see within our team helping our clients. And then in our engagements too, it takes a special skill set to be able to manage these large-scale automation projects in terms of PMs, Scrum Masters, and things like that to know how to go into a session and do proper things like backlog planning and whatnot. So all in all, our vision, I really think it's simple, right? We're here to drastically change the way networks are operated. And by drastically, we mean minimize the manual interactions with the network and get that down to be as little as possible and help our clients to go on that journey while empowering them to essentially own what we might help build and deploy over a period of months to years. Community for us has been pretty important. Again, I started years ago as a delegate and have presented in a variety of conferences. Now our team in the past several months, just the folks in the room, we did Damien, John, and Jeremy on various podcasts on Packet Pushers, Network Collective, going to Nanog, Interop, just a number of things. And most special and near and dear to our heart is a Slack workspace that we created almost 5 years ago that has grown organically over the past couple of years to now have over 10,000 members in it. And that kind of community, not maps to a vendor, right? Truly built because there was a problem in this space and people had nowhere else to go to communicate and share things like how are you solving a given problem, what technologies are being used, what are pros and cons for a given technology as an example. So self-sign up, anyone can sign up. I know many folks in the room are on here as well. And the truth is, we have a lot of manufacturers, vendors, TMEs, product managers, partner folks that use this as a vehicle to communicate with one another, even between vendors and to end users. Because what we hear too from a lot of the manufacturers in the space, there's actually a disconnect sometimes from how and why people are even using their solutions. It's because you have your sales folks. To get back into the business, it takes either a lot of time and a lot of pressure onto given account teams. So this has been a vehicle for a lot of manufacturers even to stay close and to the actual consumers of the technology. So I only have a few more slides to kind of walk through a bit more of what we're seeing out there. This is the most common thing that we're seeing, right? There's still the manual CLI, and we'll include in that the UI, right? So we don't believe in a world that CLI is going to be used as much. It's going to naturally go down, and the same is true for UI-based systems. Meaning, if you're going to migrate from a CLI to UI, and it takes now 4 minutes to configure something, right-clicking here, copy and paste, and it's actually more error-prone versus like copying and pasting commands into a CLI. So it's really the diminishing of the manual interactions, regardless of what they are, into more automation. So where do we see our clients what do we see them doing when it comes to the first step to go on this journey? This is the most common thing, right? The folks in the first slide are now in the middle. Maybe they haven't changed. On the left, maybe there's some ad hoc Perl scripts, PHP, folks who have done scripting in the past 15 years. On the right, maybe we have somebody doing Python scripts, playbooks, and things like that. And the truth is the person on the right, the new senior engineer, because they can write, maybe a small script or a playbook? Potentially. And this is just the nature of where we are as an industry. But there's still a lot of gaps in going from what's on this slide to rolling out network automation holistically in a given environment. It could be a medium business, medium enterprise, large enterprise. Doesn't matter the size, but just because that scripts can be written, it takes a different school of thought to architect a solution for automation. And in that case, this is where what we believe there's this separation of something we'll call power tools versus building a platform. The folks in the previous slide were building power tools, and there's no problem with that, right? Change coming up tomorrow night, 8 p.m., let's build a script to automate it. And that's super helpful. It actually identifies the workflows that you might want to start with automating. And it's also critical to the learning path to go down this path of network automation. But to have a true solution and platform of which you can build a team around, and again, larger the network, larger the team, more important to have a platform. Things like historical logging, authentication, authorization, right? All of these things to consider. That way you don't end up with like 3 or 4 or 5 servers in the data center, all running different platforms and tools and independent systems for tracking. So just to consider that power tools are a great way to start, but where we want to end up is a platform. So it's not really either or, and what we actually believe it's a 3-pronged approach to success. And we've learned a lot in the past couple of years where we've actually tried to build a platform first for clients and large scale environments, and again, even size independent. And the truth is, when you talk about the word platform, it could take months to build something to then demo if you want to really get something hardened. And what we've seen is, given where the industry is, if you spend several months building something that can't be demoed, leadership loses interest. Or they want to have quick wins. They want to have workflows that can be automated immediately. So we view this as, in the beginning, these things have to happen in parallel. There needs to be some sort of high value, quick win or quick wins that can be delivered back to the business while in parallel, continuously building the platform to consume those workflows. Right? Workflows are going to be the key to success, as the network automation journey progresses within a given environment. Again, both of these coupled with our roots in training, and clients have to be enabled, right? It's not about building something for them and owning it. Often, it's an option, but at the same time, if we're building something, even using commercial tools, open source tools, really doesn't matter from our perspective, but the operational model is changing with how networks are managed. So there continuously needs to be some development. And it could be formal training, it could be coaching, design sessions, and things like that. Okay, cool. So in terms of the programs that we offer, right, quick 30 seconds on this. We talked about training. Again, this could be your 3-day, 5-day formal training, right? So we do have formal classes where instructors come on site to talk about a variety of things. Could be an API, could be a tool, protocol, things in the context of automation. As we progress up here, right, it's always important to start with assessments around automation. Understand current tools, understand current processes, most importantly, understanding the workflows, right? We can't automate what we don't know. And again, I often joke saying we're not magicians. Right? We can't help our clients automate if we can't write something down on paper on the current process that something takes to do it manually. Then we have things, jumpstart programs, getting started, enablement, transformation as an example. The higher level programs are really meant for the clients that are fully committed to go down this path. And this is where we partner with our clients to go on that journey and really co-develop, co-manage that rollout. And ultimately, towards the end, start that handoff process back to our clients. Okay.
Can I ask a question about your involvement with the community? Where I live in my corner of the world, there's basically no network automation, and it seems like there's a lot of places that are just getting involved in this. And there's a few standards. There's no real standard to cross the whole spectrum of different network vendors and operating systems and processes. With your involvement in the community, are you working with standards bodies to help develop that side of the world as well and try and make things common across the spectrum and all the use cases? Or is it really point solutions and each vendor is kind of out for themselves and this is the way to do it and this is the way to do it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things in that question. There's community involvement versus versus potentially having some normalization layers and abstractions that can be used across clients. Or community involvement, I would say we're not participating in things like IETF or working groups and things like that. We're aware of a lot of what's going on in the automation space, coming from the various groups. But I would say based on where we sit as an organization, it is in the middle of a lot of the manufacturers, right? Both on the equipment side and the tool side. And some, vendors, manufacturers are, they're going to do what's best for them as a business. And so I think what our value in coming in to our clients is to help build some of those abstractions and layers within a solution. John may even talk about some of this in his talk, but having the architecture built out such that your automation consumption layer and how you consume it day to day isn't really going to change if you choose to migrate from vendor A to B to C, routing platforms, switching platforms. That is the goal of our clients usually in this space, to be able to say, if they go down this path of network automation, the automation shouldn't change if the technology changes. That can go from standalone devices, controllers, and things like that. Now, in that space, I would say, there's still a lack of standards, but as we continue to grow, we do hope to contribute back more to the open source community, and we'll see what happens there. Okay.
I've got a high-level question for you as well. I'm just curious, as you go into these companies and looking at your curve there and the training and the automation assessment and all of that, how do you deal with company cultures where there's a huge hesitation to automate and it's, everything I have is so critical, I can't afford for it to fail at scale and those kind of things, because I run into environments like that. How do you guys deal with that challenge of getting them comfortable with automation?
Everyone is different. And dealing with the various spectrum of engineers, leaders, and senior leaders. And again, I think John would talk a little bit about this at the tail end of his section. But my quick 2 cents on that is every person has a different aha moment with knowing how it's valuable to them as an individual and what it can do for them. And I think that is the missing piece to really get into the brain of a lot of the people and have them understand it, personally and professionally. And so, in our engagements, we get time to, sit down and speak with a lot of the team and, leadership as well. As an example, there's leaders that want to learn about some of the tools we'll mention today because they question, how could they get behind this? They're not even aware of what they're asking their team to do right now in terms of, some of the technology that exists. So, it is truly, potential skill sets, transformation at the engineering level, and even leadership. So I do think everyone has a different aha moment with how they get there is unique from hopefully seeing live demos to really bring it to life. And if it's verticalized solutions around their existing business. But there's definitely no one size fits all.
Yeah, I've kind of got a follow-up on this. And when you meet with the senior leaderships of companies, can you talk about how you manage their expectations? Like you said, they're looking for these quick wins, or they lose interest. So when you sit down and meet with them for the first or second time, what is your experiences with helping them to really understand the reality of how complicated they want something done versus how long it's going to take?
Well, I think it's been a learning process for sure, and as you're probably aware as well, I think in this space, no matter how long you think it's going to take, it's probably going to take double, maybe even triple, especially if you are involving some customization around it. And usually, it takes the first 80% of the project could take the same amount of time as the last 20% of the project to get things ready for production and add tests and whatnot. So, again, I think, as we continue to, learn as an industry, learn from our clients, I think expectation setting is there. I think verbally we'll message that to say, like, look, you're asking for X, and even costs are higher than they expect because they think automation just happens overnight or by deploying a single tool. And there could be, agreed disagreements there, and ultimately, I think over time, it's as they have, it could be internal staff work on it, then things become more apparent with how many questions have to be asked and to really dive into a given workflow.